Well, welcome back into another episode of Kolby's Corner Live. I appreciate everyone for jumping in last time. I'm going to try and make this more of a regular occurrence. But yeah, what an absolute marathon of a day it was at the Merriman Athletic Center with Virginia Tech football having its media day and then having open practice media availability there shortly after. So just going to jump into some quick rundown from media days and also practice. Make sure to jump in live and comment any questions you might have. We'll make sure to get to them at the end of the show. But just straight up off the top, we'll start with the coaches' comments at their press conferences. So Coach Pry started it off. A lot of the same nomenclature that you've heard from him sort of coming out of camp so far already. Talked about today was the first day in pads, and we'll get to the practice report a little bit later. But end of mini camp too. Pry in recent years has broken it down into those different 3 practice segments of mini camps. He talked about a lot. Obviously, it's been made a lot of from ACC kickoff to when we talked to him last week, how the team looks a lot better shape. Obviously, coming from Coach Ferguson taking over in the summer, he says the team looks like it's a lot more leaner, not necessarily larger, but definitely leaner, and credited Ferguson for that. He also talked about, I thought, one of the most interesting comments that Pry made in his comments at Media Day in his press conference was the situational football emphasis. Obviously, so much has been made of the one-score games and not being able to get that monkey off his back. But bringing in Sam Seifkes from the NFL, that's a massive emphasis at that level. And me, Evan G. Watkins, were lucky enough to go to the coaches clinic down in the 757, and I sat in on Sam Seifkes' seminar, tutorial, whatever you want to call it, and pretty much a third or a quarter of that, I think, was outlined to his specific packages for different scenarios in the game, 2-minute drill, 25-second drill, all these different packages where it's only these number of plays. So it really simplifies things for the players knowing, okay, if we're in this situation, it's this, we can only do this here. And I thought it was really funny. He had a exchange with David Teal about a certain play. They were at practice the other day. He pulled up a clip at practice in the film room, and it was like, okay, this looks like it's something kind of minute, but this can cost you a game. These type of mistakes can compound and end up costing you a game. He referenced a game when he was coaching at Wofford, and the same mistake that I don't think he went into detail. I didn't double check on what that mistake was, but that mistake ended up costing them the game at Wofford. So good teaching point there. Definitely leaning into that situational awareness, because it's come to that point where you got to go prove it on the field. So Pry said they've taken a deep dive into that, obviously situational football. Also Pry talking about the offensive line. He said their cohesion's improved. And like I said, I feel like it's a broken record until we get into football season and we can actually see what's happening on the field. But they leaned into cohesion, team building really heavily this offseason. I thought it was really impressive when I talked to Kyle Altuner, the West Virginia transfer center today, and he made it abundantly clear, hey, it's 5 operating as 1. I know I'm just stepping in here, but it's how can we all work together the best? And that's a guy who seems like he's really slotted into that leadership position well. Someone who's only been here a couple months, obviously in the spring, had a nice spring, but someone who talking to today just seems like he's really commanded that room. And you can make sure to catch out all those player interviews, talk to a lot of the new transfers, a lot of new guys over on vtscoop.com or my YouTube channel, on my Twitter account. You can find all those there. I thought some guys really had some insightful things to say. But specifically Altuner, talked to Jazari Priester, another guy on the offensive line who made the change. It was kind of funny. He was talking about how, man, I thought I had a pretty good spring on the defensive line, but he had a post-spring meeting with Pry. I thought his best position was over on the offensive line. Talked to Montavious Cunningham. I thought he had some really interesting points. There's a good story over on vtscoop.com about that. I thought something interesting he really said was that Coach Moore, he coaches all the guys the same. He says he can really already see an improvement in his footwork, and he feels like he's already applying the things, like he's practicing better, and he can already see those early results paying off. Some other notes, just talking around, sounds like PJ Prelo's all the way back after an Achilles injury, which is pretty remarkable. We'll get into more stuff from practice, but it just seems innately like this has got to be one of the healthiest, or some of the healthiest this team's been going into a season in quite a while. The only 2 guys I saw at practice who were off on the side doing indie work was Jeff Overton Jr., who obviously had the knee injury at bowl prep during the Mayo Bowl, and also Josh Clark, who went down in the spring with a knee injury. So both those guys being out. I saw Darius Taylor wasn't dressed in pads, but really just Josh Clark and Jeff Overton being out. You got a lot of guys back that you wouldn't expect. Gabe Williams was out there practicing. Brody Adams out there practicing. Talked to both those guys earlier at Media Day. You can find those interviews as well. And yeah, I mean, Coach Brooks talking about PJ said it looks like he hasn't missed a beat. I thought another thing, spinning back to what Price said at media day, those top 4 cornerback positions. Obviously, when I'm talking about Josh Clark going down, that's a position in need. And Coach Cephas talked about that even a little bit. And we'll get to that in a little bit of what Cephas was looking for when he went into the portal. But getting a guy like Caleb Brown from Hawaii, he's battling in the top 4. Probably listed Dante Lovett, Thomas Williams, Isaiah Brown Murray, even working at corner, and then Caleb Brown as those top 4. Just talking a little bit about those guys. Dante Lovett, I think, has looked really good. Talking with Chance Wiggins, other guys over the summer, it's like Dante's a guy who's always going to get after it. He's never going to quit, even if he gets beat on a rep. He's going to line it up again and go after it. Looks like he's increased his frame, and he's due up. And another guy, Thomas Williams, heard really raving reviews about him and Dante. If I had to stamp it right now here on August 6th, a lot to play out in fall camp, but I think that would be the pair I would go with now, with Isaiah Brown Murray shifting in the nickel position. But Isaiah Brown Murray, that's a guy coming from ECU who's seen a lot of time in that cornerback position, is very comfortable. And then Caleb Brown, the Hawaii transfer, talked to him today. You can find that interview. Someone who's also sounds like he's had some good practices, but definitely working through some things there. So that's the top 4 that Pry identified. Something to monitor as you get closer down to South Carolina. Talking about the depth there. And then also, I thought another funny development was, I've been saying Garrett Rangel, but I mean Rangel, but I guess it's pronounced Rangel. Talked to him today when that interview. I thought it was pretty insightful with what he was saying. Just talking about how, it's not always ideal for a quarterback to come in over the summer. You miss spring. There's so much you can pick up on in the spring, especially. But he said it was kind of valuable. Everyone's learning that new offense. So he's shifted in well. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go into practice. Talked to Cam Selden, the Swiss Army knife guy. He's excited to just be on the field and do whatever. Stu Holt wants him at kick returner, in the slot, in the backfield, doing a lot of different things. And then Terrion Stewart, his name came up a bunch with Pride, talking about that running back rotation. I think that's something that's really going to have to monitor throughout fall camp, because you think about the litany of names. You got Braden Bennett, you got Marcellus Hawkins, Terrion Stewart, Jeff Overton on the mend, Prelo, as we talked about. And Pride talked about in his press conference how he's really think they're only going to see a rotation of 3 guys there at running back. So who's going to rise to the top there? I'd say right now you got Hawkins, you got Stewart in that mix, and whoever is working for that third. I didn't even mention Jeremiah Coney, the Steady Eddie, the guy who every time you count him out, he's right back there. He was taking first-team reps. Someone who I talked to today, you can find that interview as well. I feel like I talked to half the team, but just running around trying to get to everyone, but someone who is very locked in. And I think that's the other thing is, like, you talk to these guys, and obviously they're told a script of things of what to say, what to sort of follow the guide, not to say this, not to say that. But you really don't see anyone who's scared of competition. A lot of these rooms you're not really guaranteed much. You're not coming here thinking you're the incumbent or you're guaranteed anything. But no one really seems scared of that competition aspect. So I think that's a really good thing. Sort of shifting back to the cornerbacks too, I would be remiss to not mention the freshman guys, JoJo Krim, Jamari DeLoach, Knowledge Harrell in that nickel spot. Heard a lot of rave reviews about them from the players, and also, the true freshman guys. I got a lot of names or brought up from the elder statesmen were Noah Chambers. You talk about a Sheldon Robinson, guys who physically they're like, wow. So I'll talk about that a little bit from what we saw at practice, but a Sheldon Robinson and Noah Chambers, those guys really got brought up a lot by the elder statesmen when talking about true freshman guys who look like they could go out there and play. But yeah, so jumping right into that, those were sort of some brief takeaways. Also, I thought it was pretty interesting. Cephas, we hadn't talked to Cephas since the spring portal window, and it was talking to him about, once you get here, what would you target? What did you see as a void on the roster? He wanted to get bigger on that defensive line. You bring in a guy like Hickman, you bring in a guy like Heisman, you bring in a guy like Fall. They just wanted to get bigger, stop the run. I think there's almost 20 defensive linemen now in that room. So that was very interesting. You bring in a guy, more linebacker depth. Talked to Michael Short today. Haven't talked to him. Antoine Santiago, bringing in 2 linebackers, more depth in that room. You bring in Caleb Brown, like I mentioned. So very targeted, wanted to get deeper at linebacker, get more options, see what he had at linebacker, and then also just more bodies and more bigger bodies specifically on the defensive line. And you can sort of see that. So like I said, we might not get too many questions answered about the scheme until August 31st, but you'll definitely kind of see the personnel typing that he wants. And then jumping into practice, we only were able to see a couple periods, those early team stretch, indie workouts, and I didn't really get to see any live team drills. Like I said, they were in pads, so which is nice. So you could kind of see the offensive line going at it a little bit. To open up, John Love actually missed a couple field goals in the field goal unit. I don't think that's much to worry about. Obviously, I think everyone's seen what he can do, but just something to note. Like I said, Jeff Overton and Josh Clark were the only players on the side doing indie drills. I thought something to note. I mean, Shamari Snook-Peterkin, wide receiver, another guy I'd be remiss at that, I'd say, if older players didn't bring up that name a lot today during media days. He put a couple balls on the ground, definitely was hanging his head. Coach Fontel Mines came over, threw the ball at him a couple times, told him, hey, just catch it, just catch it. And even in routes on air for Kyron Drones, a quarterback, to come over and sort of pick his head up, I thought it was a really good display of leadership to come over in, one of the earliest periods of practice and say, okay, like, not a big deal. Like, let's go to the next one. Because he's going to have a bright future ahead. I don't think his frame is exactly where other guys like Noah Chambers or Sheldon Robinson are playing wise, but I think that's going to be a really good player. And he's shown some really good things early. And like I said, I don't want to start the hype train too much, but just looking at Noah Chambers, just body typing on the sideline, that guy is a freak. And some really good technique and tackling. Like I said, we're only seeing some individual work, so it's not showing half the full picture, and he's going to make his freshman mistakes. But if that's someone who can get on special teams and work his way in, like, that is someone to definitely keep an eye on. Talking about the quarterbacks, I thought Kyron Drones looked really in rhythm. Like, I think this team goes with him, and that's not really much of a question. How far this team can go is sort of dependent on that. And like I said, it's routes on air. It's still, you can't really put too much stock in it, but looks super confident, just dotting it up, the connection. I thought one of the biggest things was they were about to go into team period, inside run. So it was all inside. So the defensive line and all that unit was coming inside. They were sort of jamming up the sideline. And Coach Montgomery was blowing it dead because the sideline wasn't clear. Donovan Green already got into his break on his out route. Montgomery blew it dead, but Green was out of his route. Drones didn't even have his feet set. Sort of fired one in there off base and still put it right on the money. So I don't know. It was just something where it's like, okay, like this is a little bit different, off base, not even really set, and still put it right there on the money. I don't know, like, if you could even credit his foot injury for that, having to work on all these off-platform throws off of one leg. But I don't know. He looked really in rhythm. I thought Pop Watson had a solid day. I thought Garrett Rangel, threw the ball around a little bit better than the last time we saw him. I don't know. That's comfortability. Like I said, really, really small sample size. And then the true freshman, I thought Keldon Ryan had a couple really nice throws. I thought AJ Brand had one really nice on a seam route that I saw. So that'll be something to monitor, that backup quarterback battle. But the team will go where Kyron goes. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's get to some of these comments. All right. Sean, knock on wood. Does that running back room depth make it, though? Have you heard anything about Dandy or Abby? Okay. Have you heard anything about Dandy or Abby? Don't think Price mentioned either in his post-practice interview. Haven't heard too much. Saw Jason Abby actually had a really nice rep on tackling drill in, spring practice number 4 that we were able to see. And haven't heard too much on Derek Dandy. I think a lot of those guys, like, you bring in so much depth above them, they can kind of get lost in the mix, especially on that edge position, talking to guys like Ben Bell, James DeJoncum. They kind of slot in already ahead of those guys. Like Jason Abby, Asen Stevens had really solid ends of the year, and I think they'll play their way in. But you talk about a guy like Keyshawn Burgos coming back. It's just a lot of mouths to feed. That was a question I really wanted to get to Price, because, like, none of these guys are scared of competition, but there's only so many snaps in a game, and they're going to rotate a bunch. Like, they want these guys fresh. But yeah, that's definitely something that they're going to have to watch through. So yeah, I mean, it was a good practice. I'm looking forward to doing more of these. Like I said, I'm still trying to figure it out. Hopefully, like, I'm not lagging out like last time, but this has been a bunch of fun. So yeah, make sure to stay tuned into Kolby's Corner, vtscoop.com. We're going to have a bunch of content. I'm actually going to hit the road right after this and head back to the 757, and I'll be back up here next week, but we'll have all the content coming in. Yeah, there you go. The running back room is super deep. Totally agree with that. But it's who's going to step into that top 3. And like I said, I think it's really going to depend. Like, I think Marcellus Hawkins is that all around more complete back where he can do a little bit of everything, but I don't know if he's exactly the best at everything. And I think probably even brought that up, saying he's the most all around, but maybe doesn't have the best traits all around. I think Braden Bennett could be that guy out of the backfield. Obviously, he has so many career catches. Hawkins is sort of that in between. Stewart doesn't have the best pass blocking grades, doesn't have the best pass catching abilities, but is an absolute bruiser, and heard a lot of really positive things about him today. And then Jeremiah Coney, I think, also kind of falls into that, where he can do it all. He's caught it out of the backfield. You saw him step up in spot minutes in the Mayo Bowl against Syracuse and only did what he was supposed to do. So it's definitely going to shake out there. Same with the wide receiver room, how that lineup's going to work out. But definitely a lot of storylines to monitor. Appreciate everyone tuning in again. Really looking forward to doing more of these and just improving as we go. But for now, I'm going to hit the road. Really stoked on Media Day. Make sure to go check out all the content. I dumped a bunch of interviews with new guys who haven't ever been interviewed before by the media. Really just quick hitters over on my. You can find it on the YouTube channel if you're watching here on the shorts, or over on X. And yeah, really appreciate it, guys. And yeah, I'm going to go drive home. But yeah, everyone have a great day, great weekend, and stay tuned in.